push-ups. And so notice, if we truly believe that sleep is this magical, mythical, like cure for so many of our ailments, problems, anxiety, like, well, then why don't we treat it like that? It's because we're human and we say stuff is important, but saying something's important doesn't mean you actually go after it. You have to make it a priority. So sleep, obviously. Well, number two, right? So that's passive. I'm not doing anything. And obviously at night, that's when our cerebral spinal fluid is going to bathe, kind of like our lymphatic drain. There's so many things, right? There's good resources out there, like Why We Sleep by Matt Walker.
Even though fantastic book.
It's got some, there's recently been some scientific arguments against some of his claims, but I think generally it's where people need to start heading is towards respecting it, but not glorifying to the point where we get focused on one thing, remember? Because someone might be getting pretty good sleep, but then their nutrition. So when it comes to recovery, we have obviously our pre-workout nutrition, our peri-workout nutrition, so that's intra-workout, and then post-workout nutrition. And I'm telling you right now, most people are eating not remotely close to the demands they're putting on their body, right? It's absolutely crazy because most people maybe come from a strength background and then they're adding in the endurance. Or maybe someone's an endurance athlete, but they're not used to doing, 100 pull-ups in a day. So when we become a concurrent athlete where we're training everything, swimming, rucking, running, pull-ups, push-ups, 8 counts, the demands you're placing on your body nutritionally are quite high. And I'm not here to put blanket terms and say, this is what you eat, because we know nutrition is so it's like World War III when you start talking about nutrition.
Yeah.
And everyone's got their deeply held beliefs. And when you say anything about nutrition, people think you're calling their kid ugly. But here's the truth, is the demands for carbohydrate are much higher than most people think. So when it comes to this, what I want you to think is we have to know how much weight is just our maintenance weight. So if I don't know how much my total daily energy expenditure is, which is pretty much how many calories I just need to sustain my day, that's going to be a problem. So for most people, I say you need to spend about 2 weeks. You need to pull out the scale and you need to start measuring and kind of getting a baseline for how many calories is just maintenance. Right?
Okay. Just to maintain.
Because, obviously, we're adding more if we're trying to gain and dropping more, but I don't want to get into that into today's discussion. But when it comes to nutrition, so like, for instance, when it comes to an effort, right, then we have our fueling the effort. So, for instance, if I said to most people, what do you do for recovery? They tell me about all their foam rolling and they tell me about all this. And then I'd be like, what did you do for nutrition? They're like, well, I drank some electrolytes. Well, what did you burn in terms of carbohydrate, protein, fat? And then they'd be like, well, I just ate. Well, how much? Right? Because don't you have another strength session 4 hours from now that you need to hit a stimulus? And if you're not refueled, how are you going to maximize that stimulus or, once again, not delay the recovery process? So, for instance, let me give some numbers to help people. These are not blanket numbers. Please don't take this as gospel. It's all individualized. For my athletes that are training for military selections or concurrently, I'm going to have them recover at 80% carbohydrate, 10% protein, and 10% fat from a cardiovascular effort. So let's do the math. Let's say you go for an hour run and you burn 500 calories. 80% of that would be roughly, 400 calories, which would be 100 grams of carbs. Think about that. 100 grams of carbs is a lot for most people.
I was going to say, it sounds like a lot.
It's not, because of what we are doing, which is concurrent training. You have to supply, and carbs are the fuel for performance. I don't care what the keto cult says. This is not about stopping seizures, which is what the keto diet was originally for. This is not about insulin. This is about performance, not health. So 80%, and here's the thing, that's just to recover from the effort, not to repair. Recover, repair. So we probably have to add an additional 10% calories from that. So that would be about 100 grams of carbs. Then if I'm doing 10% protein, that would be around 25 grams of protein, and then around 10 grams of fat. And you see how I know those numbers? It's because in my workout book, I'll pull this out. So I did my training earlier today. You guys can see, I know people can't see this if they're not watching YouTube. So on my book, I literally went for my run, and then I calculated how many calories I burnt. And under here, I have a section called substrates. That's why I'm super nerdy. It's not called food. I literally have the exact carbs, fats, and protein breakdown I need to recover and repair from that effort. So I am not spending additional time in recovery. Because if, let's say I need 100 grams of protein or carbs, 25 grams of protein and 10 grams of fat, and I get 50 grams of carbs, which would be a lot for most people. That's a decent amount for most people.
Yeah.
Post run, because they just grab something light, right? Like a banana and some electrolytes. I'm already down 50%. And most people are eating during their workouts, which is a problem too. If I'm just a power lifter, I don't need to eat during my workout because I'm not burning through glycogen to any significant extent. If I have a run in the morning and I'm going to the pool to swim later that night, I need to be eating during my events. And that's the crazy thing. So I teach people that they need to be eating. So for some of my training runs, I'm getting upwards of 100 grams of carbs per hour for my longer events. So if I'm going for a 4-hour run, I'm getting 100 grams per hour so that when I'm done with that event, I'm not delaying my recovery process.
And in what mechanism are you eating that?
Yeah, so this is number one, the practice of training is we have to learn how to eat while we're training. And most people, here's an example. Someone will go to the pool and they'll fin for 90 minutes. They might do that in the morning because that's when the pool's available. They don't eat, and then they go to do their Metcon or circuit later. Do you see how we're chronically underfueling? And especially, like I said, for most of my concurrent athletes, I'm prescribing 80% carbohydrate, 10% protein, 10% fat to recover from their workouts. Obviously, the individual variances are going to be on their other meals.
And again, this is performance-based. This is going for performance.
I'm not telling you, right? This is to refuel from exercise, right? And then the second thing is, so obviously, right, with nutrition, it's like, then we got to talk about like how much protein do we need, right? People are focused on protein, and they're getting like 2 grams. They're trying to get like 2 grams per pound of lean muscle mass. So if someone weighs 150 pounds, they're like, oh, I hit 300 grams of protein today. That makes no sense because if a burn victim is in the hospital, they're only given like at max 1.2 grams to 1.5 grams per pound, and they've lost massive amounts of tissue, more than we could sustain in any training. Carbohydrate, despite what the internet says, despite what Dr. Mark Hyman says, is the fuel of endurance training. Not powerlifting, not standalone sessions, but collectively. So when people get into these, when they go through the to prep or SWIC, when they get to combat control school, they're so focused on where's the Theragun, they haven't even got their nutrition numbers down.
No, that's true.
And what might be a perceived lack of performance is a lack of fueling, and fuel always adds up. So what you did on Tuesday is limiting you on Wednesday afternoon, potentially Thursday morning. So on Thursday, you might be like, wow, I had a really bad run. You might have been under your carbohydrates for the past 2 days, and now it's finally hit you. And now, since you're underfueled in carbs, you cannot stimulate. You can't run that fast. So now it feels harder, you're adapting less, and you're spending more time in recovery. So it's a confounding problem.
It makes total sense, especially because when I went through NDOC, it was Mondays were evaluation days. So, we had all weekend of rest, just shoving down large Papa John's pizzas in our faces, and Mondays were evaluation days. And by the time you got to Friday, you were smoked, just done. And I'm for sure a carbohydrate and a caloric deficit without a doubt, because, we're only eating 3 meals a day. And this is, late 90s, early 2000s. And, to take extra food out of the chow hall was that was unheard of, and they weren't supplementing us with any kind of protein shake or anything like that. So, I mean,
well,
it was
in selection, I'm sure people are going to say, well, what do I do in selection? It's like, you don't have a choice what food you're given. They give you and you do. It's
Yep.
not about performance. I know you're trying to get selected, but it's not about it's actually about durability. It's about survival.
Yep.
You're not trying to win a 800-meter race at the USA track and field. You're trying to survive an ungodly and unsustainable amount. So obviously, when it's out of your control, stop trying to control it. So people are going to be like, well, what do I eat during selection if they don't give us food? Well, I wonder. Probably nothing.
Yeah. Well, you don't have anything to eat, but but again, you sleep when you can and you eat when you can.
Exactly. There's no magic. Don't quit.
Yeah. Don't
Stop
quit.
focusing on what you're going to eat. Don't quit. Now, if you're given the resources, don't squander them.